Hey Austin, Nick Riley here with Driftwood Builders Roofing. Now, as we live in Austin, Texas, in a very hail-prone area, we frequently get asked by customers and potential customers, do I have hail damage? And so I put together this really quick educational resource guide for how to spot hail damage without having to get on the roof. So let's get started. So first off, after a hailstorm hits, customers can walk around their house without having to get on the roof and look for potential signs of hail damage in three key areas. The first is gutters and downspouts. The second is windows and window screens. And the third is siding. And so today we're going to walk through specific examples from recent customers we've worked with, and I'll show you what is hail damage versus what's not hail damage. But after a hailstorm hits, we highly encourage you to walk around, look at those three things, and take as much photos and documentation as you possibly can. So this is a recent example from a customer in Northwest Austin. They had hail hit and then they called us. We found hail damage. Travelers came out and approved their full insurance claim for 95 squares, huge roof. And so today I'm going to show you some pictures from that house for what is hail damage, for what is not hail damage. So on the left, you can see circles. You can see on the gutter spout, this circle right here. That is hail damage. And we can tell because hail, always comes in a circle, sometimes really big, sometimes really small, but it's always relatively the same shape, right? And then the picture on the right, apologies for that, the top of it encircled in red, you can see that is hail damage because once again, the shape is a circle. But if you go down to the item circled in yellow, you can see it's somewhat circular, but there's a giant line through the gutter spout. So hail, does not fall in squares, it falls in circles. So a giant line in the gutter spout is usually from someone walking past it and accidentally shoving it, or maybe some metal smashing into it when someone was moving. But a line in the gutter spout indicates it's not hail damage. So now this slide on the left, circled in red, you can see that, circle is hail damage. And then on the right, circled in yellow, we once again see a line and a dent in the gutter spouts, which tells us that it's not hail damage. It's most likely, someone accidentally hit it or walked by it, and it's not hail damage if it's not a circle. So now we get to this third example, and both examples indicate hail damage. So on the left, circled in red, you can see, it's a really small circle. That one was hard to see, but we found it. And then on the right, that's pretty small as well, but you can clearly see, there's a circular hail that hit that gutter spout, so we can tell that is hail damage. Now, this last example for gutter spouts is not hail damage for a couple big reasons. One, you can see the mark on the top right here is significantly bigger than the other marks. And hail typically falls in roughly the same size. So if you see, most of the examples we went through, the hail was about this big, probably 0.75 inches, maybe an inch. This top mark right here looks like it's 3 inches. We know this isn't hail damage for the first reason. It's some marks are much bigger than others. And then as you can see, there's so many lines on that. And once again, hail, falls in circular balls and not, straight lines. And then lastly, as you can see from the photo, this gutter spout is right next to a metal gate. And so my hypothesis is that, when someone walked by, probably maybe, the HVAC guys or someone were installing a bunch of stuff and they accidentally, smashed up the gutter spout. So we can tell that this is not hail damage on the gutter spout. Now, my next example we're going to go through is how to spot hail damage on windows. So as we look on the left, we see hail damage by chipped parts of a window. So as you can see on the bottom of the windows is a chip part there, a chip part there, a chip part there, and they're relatively the same size. And then we look on the right and we see there's all these little beats or, kind of holes in the window we can tell it's hail damage because it's roughly all the same size and it's roughly all the same mark. Now, the next example we have for hail damage on windows, as you can see on the left, this window was hit by a circular mark. This is a little bit harder to see, but as you can see from our example, this is most likely hail damage, as you know, the circular mark indicates hail. And then on the right, we see pretty much the same exact thing, except, on the top of the window rather than the side of the window. So these are both great examples of what hail damage looks like on windows. And here we have hail damage on window screens. So sometimes people have screens on their windows, and so you can see the hail damage on those. And so on the left, we have, a circular ball right in the middle of the screen. That's hail damage. And then on the right side, we have quite a few holes there. As you can see, they're all relatively the same size. Obviously, some like this are bigger than others like this, but they're all relatively the same size and shape, which tells us that that's hail damage. All right, so here we have examples of hail damage on siding. So on the left side, we can see that is hail damage because once again, we see the circular hail ball, and we see it spread across the siding in the middle as well, and not just at the very ends and the corners. And then on the right side, we see circled in yellow, that is not hail damage. There's no circles. It's just old warped siding, probably caused by old age and the Texas heat, but that is not hail damage on the right side. Now, going to this slide, on the left side, we have examples of hail damage on aluminum siding. And once again, we see the same circular holes, all about the same size, hitting on all different parts of the siding. So that is hail damage. And then on the right side, what we see is an example circled in yellow that is not hail damage. And so we see this a lot. And as you can see, that is, the size of that mark on the right is relatively similar to the size of the marks on the left. However, this mark and all the marks at the corners of this house that we inspected last Friday, they all came at the very corner of the side. And so typically, like if siding is old, the end of a board nears its useful life and it starts to crack at the very corners. But that's just wear and tear and old age, but it is not hail damage. So lastly, our example, is it hail damage, yes or no? No, that is not hail damage. It's Santa Claus after drinking too much eggnog. Thank you so much for your time and have a great rest of your day.